You are being exploited. You wake up tired, live anxiously, and work like a convict. And yet, you feel you are always in debt. Time, energy, love, dignity. The account is never settled. And you want to know why?
Because they sold you a lie, and you bought it. They promised you that if you obeyed, you would be happy. That if you studied, worked yourself to death, accepted humiliations, swallowed your pride, saved money, and fit in, you would eventually have a good life. But the end never comes, and you are increasingly distant from yourself. Do you know anyone who is truly happy? How many rich people do you know who are not sick, unhappy, or completely empty? How many simple people do you know who live smiling but are fundamentally broken by fear? Have you realized that no one wins this game? Because the game was made so that no one wins. Money is infinite, time is scarce, and the ego is a hole. Alan Watts knew it. He said, "Life is like music. Its meaning is not at the end. It is in dancing while it is playing." But no one taught you to dance. They taught you to run, chasing goals, chasing validation, chasing a future that does not exist. Meanwhile, the system sucks you dry, your hours, your sanity, your youth. And when you wake up, if you wake up, it may already be too late. You are not living. You are surviving inside a script written by people who profit from your confusion. And the pillars of this script are three: money, time, and ego. Three illusions that seem real because they were programmed into you since childhood. Today, you will understand how each of these illusions was built to keep you blind. And once you see, you will not be able to unsee. There are many people dying today, alone, exhausted, with full bank accounts. And there are people alive but dead inside, selling every hour of their day as if time were merchandise, as if life had a price tag. Money is not the problem. The illusion around it is. You think you want money, but what you really want is what you were told money buys: freedom, peace, status, security, love. Only this is a trap, because the closer you get, the further away all that seems to be. Alan Watts said, "Money is a way of measuring wealth, not wealth itself. Confusing the two is like eating the menu thinking it's the dinner. And that is exactly what we are doing. We are devouring paper, digits, and promises while starving for meaning. The obsession with money is the new global religion. It decides who lives and who dies, who is heard and who is ignored, who sleeps peacefully and who drowns in debt. Only there is a detail no one mentions. Money is a concept. It has no real value. It only has symbolic value, and that value changes based on collective belief. That is, it is a functional fiction. You work for a number, you earn that number, and you use it to exchange for things that have been valued by other people. You only exist in the game. But the game was invented by those who were already winning. Science has already confirmed it. After a certain point, more money does not increase happiness. Nobel laureate psychologist Daniel Kahneman showed that after a relatively comfortable annual income, emotional gains stabilize. The rest is vanity, illusion, vice. But still, what moves billions of people every day is this: the promise that, with a little more, I will be okay. And this phrase never comes true because it was made not to. Have you seen what happens to those who have everything? Depressed multimillionaire athletes, institutionalized celebrities, successful executives who jump off buildings, families destroyed by inheritances. This is not the exception, it is the pattern. Because when money becomes the end, it leads nowhere. It just takes you further away from yourself. Watts said money should be like fuel on a journey. Necessary, but never the destination. But today, it has become the steering wheel, the GPS, and the road. It is what drives you. Think of someone who works 30, 40 years in something they hate to finally be able to enjoy life. And when that day comes, if it comes, the body is already tired, the children have grown up, the dreams have evaporated. life has become a collection of paid bills. And here is the cruelest detail. The system we live in does not want you to feel secure with what you have. It needs you to want more, always more. Because if you are content, you stop consuming. And if you stop consuming, they stop profiting. So they feed you with absence every day. This race for money has no finish line. And if you do not realize this, you become a slave to something that should be a tool. Money is not freedom. Money, when it becomes an obsession, is a prison with Wi-Fi. You are not in a hurry. You are dying. It is not drama. It is arithmetic. Every second that passes does not return, does not recycle, cannot be saved. Time is the only thing you cannot store. But still, you live as if you had an infinite stock. While money is the great disguise of modern life, time is the open, silent, invisible, but fatal wound. You live waiting for the weekend, waiting for the holiday, waiting for vacation, waiting for retirement, waiting for the right moment. As if life were a rehearsal and one day it would truly begin. But it has already begun. It is happening now and you are not in it. Alan Watts said, "There is no future. The future is an illusion. There is only the now, and even the now has already passed. But you were taught to live for what comes next. At school, you study for a job that comes next. At work, you live waiting for the break that comes next. And during the break, you prepare for Monday, which comes next. It is a chain, a circular routine that looks like movement, but it is just repetition. People are not afraid of death. They are afraid of realizing that they never lived. And time collects. It collects with gray hair, with pain in the chest, with nostalgia that cannot be fixed. It collects with voices that are silenced, with children who grow up, with parents who age, with you becoming a stranger inside your own body. Science already has evidence of what Watts said intuitively. Neuroscience studies show that the human mind lives in a state of dispersion most of the time, reliving the past or rehearsing the future, and this is directly linked to unhappiness. Living absent from the present is not just a bad habit, it is a psychological poison. It is what makes you not remember what you ate yesterday. It is what leads you to wake up tired after 8 hours of sleep. It is what transforms rare moments into fog. Look at the ordinary days. They disappear. And when you realize it, it is already another year. It is already another number on your ID. It is too late to apologize, too late to change paths, too late to say, "I love you," while looking into their eyes. The uncomfortable truth is this: your life is being devoured by the calendar, and you did not even chew the last few years properly. Time is not real. It is a useful invention, like money. But you were conditioned to obey it as if it were a divinity. They made you a slave to the clock, to age, to the phases of life, to the stages. But who defined that at 30 you have to be successful? That at 60 you are old? That there is a too late? This counting is artificial, and it serves only one purpose: control. Because a human being who respects their own time, who lives in the now without haste and without guilt, is uncontrollable. They do not consume out of anxiety. They do not obey out of fear. They do not run because someone else is running. That human being is not interesting to the system. What no one tells you is that there is no ideal future where everything will fit together. There is no guaranteed better tomorrow for those who sacrifice today. The only thing guaranteed is that every minute you kill out of boredom, time kills you back. You are not who you think you are. The name you use, the title you carry, the image you built all of this, is just the wrapper, and you confused yourself with the wrapper. Your identity was shaped by compliments, criticisms, frustrations, likes, traumas, fears. You are a walking marketing project trying to convince the world and yourself that you are someone. The ego is not you. It is the role you play, and the more you invest in that persona, the further away you get from who you really are. Alan Watts said, "The ego is just a social convention, like a name or a function. But the problem begins when you identify with it. You were not born with an ego. It was installed, little by little, like a software. You learned that you needed to compete, stand out, win. You learned that you need to prove you are better, that you are worth something. And that is where the self you present to the world emerged. Controlled, formatted, accepted, but empty. And the world rewards you for that persona. If you exhibit confidence, you gain respect. If you show success, you gain applause. If you pretend happiness, you gain followers. But this comes at a price. Because the stronger the ego, the more fragile you become. The ego needs constant approval. It needs to win arguments, win debates, be right. It needs to be desired, admired, recognized. It feeds on comparison and fear, and there is the poison. The more the ego grows, the more you distance yourself from your own essence. This is the trick. The ego sells you the illusion of control, but in practice, it makes you a hostage of external opinion. That is why so many successful people crumble. That is why there is an unbearable emptiness in people who have conquered everything. Because the ego won, but the soul was left behind. Look at cases of burnout, influencers who quit at the peak, famous people who can no longer bear to look at themselves in the mirror. These people did not fail. They were devoured by a persona they created to survive. The ego turns everything into competition. Even spirituality. People trying to be more evolved, more conscious, more awakened than others. It is just ego disguised as light. Watts warned, "You do not need to improve yourself. You need to free yourself from the idea that there is something wrong with you." This phrase destroys one of the largest markets in the world, that of self-help, because the entire logic of personal performance stems from the idea that you need to be more, when in reality you only need to be less what they expect and more what you already are. The ego hates silence, hates vulnerability, hates uncertainty. But it is in silence that you find yourself, in vulnerability that you heal, and in uncertainty that life happens. You were not born to uphold a persona, you were born to live. But as long as you are identified with that self that lives in fear of failing, being forgotten, being rejected, you will continue acting and die exhausted from so much pretending. This is the true prison of modernity. It is not the visible bars, but the invisible image you have to maintain. And the whole world, from marketing to self-knowledge, thrives on this. Inflating the ego and then selling you relief. You do not live in a society. You live inside a system of behavioral conditioning on an industrial scale, which was designed for you to obey without realizing it. And the most brilliant thing about this prison? It convinced you that being free is being functional. Have you ever wondered why, even when everything seems okay, something feels wrong? Even with money in the account, free time on the weekend, and the ego fed by likes and validation, there is still something disconnected. A restlessness that does not go away. This is not bad luck, it is the architecture. Alan Watts pointed directly to this. Education prepares you to be a good employee. Culture molds you to be a good consumer. And religion teaches you to accept this as right. The combination is devastating. The system does not want you to think, create, or question. It wants you to produce, spend, and repeat. Look at the format of your life. Since childhood, you enter a classroom, sit in rows, raise your hand to speak, memorize correct answers, take exams that measure obedience, not intelligence. Later, you trade the classroom for the office, where you meet goals and deadlines, adopt a professional stance, and endure in silence, because that is how the world works. This world, however, was designed by someone, and it was not by you. Modern economy is driven by your frustration. You need to be perpetually dissatisfied to keep buying. You need to feel ugly to desire beauty. You need to feel behind to chase after time. You need to feel insufficient to build an ego that protects you. It is emotional engineering, a factory of absence. And the cruelest thing is that the more you adapt to the system, the further you distance yourself from yourself. Look at social media. It was not made to connect. It was made to compare. School was not made to awaken. It was made to standardize. Work was not made to evolve the human being. It was made to extract from them. And even spirituality, increasingly transformed into a product, often only reinforces the ego structure, now with a new fantasy of superiority. The illusion is systemic. Alan Watts said, "We are so accustomed to living for the system that we forget what it is like to live for oneself." And that is why so many people, when they stop, collapse. Because when the noise ceases, the void appears. And in that moment, you realize that everything you were was function, was role, was peace. The machine of modern society does not want you awake, because if you wake up, you stop running. If you stop running, you stop consuming. If you stop consuming, the system collapses. The world you live in is an engine powered by collective anxiety, and the individual cure is a systemic threat. It is no coincidence that so many are getting sick. It is not a failure, it is the price of maintaining this gear. And when the disease is collective, the individual can no longer be blamed. The problem is not in you, it is in the logic you were forced to call normal. Waking up hurts because the exact moment you awaken, everything you believe to be true begins to rot before your eyes. And you realize it was not the world that was wrong, it was the lens they gave you. All your life you were taught to pursue, to run after, to improve, to evolve. But no one taught you to stop, to silence, to listen, because stopping is dangerous. Stopping makes the system choke. Stopping is starting to see what they do not want you to see, that perhaps you were already everything before they taught you that you were nothing. Alan Watts said, "You are a function of the universe, not a stranger lost within it." This phrase tears down the entire logic of separation that sustains modern society. Because if you are the universe, then you do not need to prove yourself, fit in, or defend yourself. You just need to be. But that being frightens, because it does not generate profit, it does not fit into a job title, it does not respond to a label, it does not buy compulsively, it does not compete for attention, and above all, it does not obey. Liberation is not leaving the system physically, it is leaving the mental programming. It is seeing the game and stopping playing it. This is not disinterest, it is lucidity. It is starting to use money as a tool without selling your soul for it. It is understanding time as a flow and not as a debt. It is perceiving the ego as a role, which you can put on but also take off. It is returning to be the author of your own consciousness, without a script, without a stage, without an audience. But be warned, there is no revolution without solitude, because when you start to leave the collective hypnosis, everything around you seems strange. Conversations seem empty. Goals seem mechanical. People will often call you arrogant, lunatic, ungrateful, lost. But do not be fooled. Most are just afraid of your reflection. Because seeing someone free, being who they are, without shame, without haste, without disguise, reveals how trapped they themselves are. Science is beginning to confirm what ancestral philosophy always knew. States of presence, silence, and contemplation, previously treated as esoteric, are now studied in neuroscience, with real effects on mental health, longevity, and creativity. Watts already said, "You do not need to strive to be you. The effort is the problem. It is that continuous effort to please, compete, show worth that disconnects you from the only concrete truth. Life only happens now. You were deceived, conditioned to think you needed to build an ideal version of yourself, to only then deserve to exist. But what will free you is not adding one more layer. It is stripping them all away. It is not becoming something. It is unlearning who they told you you were. And when you do that, the world changes. Not externally, but internally. Silence begins to have more weight than opinion. Peace begins to be worth more then recognition. Simplicity begins to seem cool. And then, for the first time, you are not running after life. You are in life. Simply, fully, inevitably present. You made it this far. That already says a lot about you. In a world rushed, distracted, and anesthetized by empty promises, stopping to reflect on what truly matters is an act of courage. Courage to question, to feel, to look in the mirror without the system's filter. If this message touched you in some way, then it fulfilled its role. And if it made you uncomfortable, perhaps it is because it touched something that was dormant inside. This channel exists for that to light beacons where there is only repetition. And if you believe that content like this needs to continue, that this conversation needs to resonate beyond the walls of the algorithm, you can help. Becoming a channel member is more than financial support. It is entering a circle of rare, lucid, brave people who think outside the box, who seek more than entertainment. It is a space for more intimate exchanges, exclusive content, and a sense of belonging rare today. And if you want to go further, the Super Thanks feature is there for those who feel the desire to give back directly, as if to say, keep going, this matters. But there is only one truth. Just by being here, just by watching, reflecting, commenting, or sharing, you are already doing a lot. You are part of this change, and that has a value that no money can buy. Let us continue together, not for status, but for consciousness. And if it is to wake up, let it be now, because time is already passing.